In an unprecedented geopolitical move, U.S. President Donald Trump has announced plans to pursue the annexation of Gaza, following his controversial proposals to annex Canada, Mexico, and Greenland. This new declaration has sent shockwaves through the international community, raising concerns about regional stability, human rights, and the shifting landscape of global alliances. A strategic alliance with Israel. Trump's proposal hinges on close cooperation with Israel, a key player with vested interests in Gaza. According to sources close to Trump's team, negotiations are underway to align strategic military operations and economic policies. Trump claims that annexing Gaza would ensure peace through strong governance and eliminate terrorist threats. Israeli officials have issued cautious statements, emphasizing the importance of security cooperation while distancing themselves from direct support of the annexation plan. Behind closed doors, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has reportedly engaged in high-level talks with Trump's advisors, focusing on military logistics and the potential for joint operations. Analysts suggest that Israel sees an opportunity to secure its borders while shifting the complex governance of Gaza to an external power, thereby reducing its own security burdens. However, the Israeli public remains divided, with protests erupting in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, highlighting fears of escalating violence and diplomatic fallout. Forced relocation. A humanitarian crisis in the making. Central to Trump's plan is the relocation of Gaza's population to surrounding countries, including Egypt, Jordan, and Lebanon. This proposal has been met with fierce opposition from human rights organizations, which warn of a looming humanitarian catastrophe. The forced displacement of over 2 million Palestinians could destabilize neighboring countries already grappling with economic and political challenges. Humanitarian agencies, including the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, have sounded the alarm, predicting a refugee crisis of unprecedented scale. The logistics of relocating such a large population are staggering, involving massive coordination efforts that would strain the already fragile infrastructures of host countries. Additionally, the psychological toll on displaced individuals, many of whom have deep historical and familial ties to Gaza, cannot be overstated. Eyewitness reports from Gaza describe widespread panic, with families unsure of their future. Many fear not only the loss of their homes but also the potential for violence during the relocation process. Activists on the ground are documenting incidents of forced evictions and clashes between residents and military forces. Regional reactions, outrage and diplomacy. Leaders across the Middle East have condemned the plan. Egypt's president has labeled it an affront to sovereignty and human dignity, while Jordan has threatened to suspend diplomatic relations with any nation supporting the annexation. In Europe, reactions have ranged from diplomatic protests to calls for sanctions against entities involved in the proposed annexation. Saudi Arabia has issued a rare joint statement with Iran, denouncing the plan as a blatant violation of international law and an existential threat to the Palestinian people. The Arab League has convened an emergency summit to coordinate a unified response, with discussions focusing on potential economic sanctions against the US and Israel. Meanwhile, Russia and China have seized the opportunity to criticize US foreign policy, positioning themselves as defenders of international norms. Both countries have pledged support for Palestinian sovereignty, with China proposing a new peace initiative aimed at countering US influence in the region. Global protests and civil unrest. The ripple effects of Trump's announcement are being felt worldwide. Massive protests have erupted in capitals across Europe, Asia, and the Americas. In Washington, D.C., thousands gathered outside the White House, demanding an end to what they call imperialist aggression. Similar scenes have unfolded in London, Paris, and Berlin, where demonstrators clashed with police in heated confrontations. Social media platforms are flooded with images and videos from the protests, fueling a global movement under the hashtag #StandWithGaza. Influential public figures, including celebrities, politicians, and activists, have voiced their opposition, further amplifying the outcry. AI-based future analysis. Predicting the fallout. An AI-driven geopolitical analysis suggests that Trump's annexation efforts could trigger a cascade of global consequences. Increased terrorist activity. The displacement of Palestinians could fuel radicalization and insurgency within and beyond the region. AI models predict a surge in recruitment for extremist groups, exploiting the narrative of oppression and displacement. Economic sanctions. The U.S. could face severe economic sanctions, straining international trade relationships. Key allies may reconsider defense agreements, and multinational corporations could withdraw from American markets in protest. NATO fractures. The annexation could create rifts within NATO, as member states grapple with diverging responses. Some European countries may push for a re-evaluation of the alliance's strategic priorities, potentially weakening its cohesion. Global protests. Mass protests and civil unrest are likely, both in the US and globally. The domestic impact in America could be significant, with increased polarization and potential for violent confrontations between opposing groups. Diplomatic isolation. The U.S. risks diplomatic isolation as more countries distance themselves from what is perceived as aggressive imperialism. This could lead to a shift in global power dynamics, with emerging alliances challenging U.S. hegemony. Humanitarian crisis. AI projections indicate a worsening humanitarian situation, with refugee camps overwhelmed and international aid organizations struggling to meet basic needs. The long-term psychological and social impacts on displaced populations will have lasting effects for generations. To help our channel grow, please comment, share, like and subscribe.